Destination Earthstar. Pull out of warp speed and lock on your neutron torpedoes. Now! And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sean.
And Joe is out looking for Sam. We're hoping we can find both of them where they're missing. Some longer than others.
One went out for cigarettes. One went out looking for love. I'm hoping they both come back soon.
Yeah, maybe one of them fell in love with cigarettes.
I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Every now and again. You know, Sean, since it's just you and me, maybe we can relax a little bit. And instead, we could just talk about the plot of Destination Earthstar before we get into the whole game.
Oh, please, yes.
You know, we mostly talk about a lack of plots. So I kind of wanted to highlight the developers of Earthstar for coming up with a creative, outer space game that still keeps the idea of Earth at the forefront. Because even though they made it clear that, this does not take place on Earth and that you are from an alien planet, you were originally, like, your ancestors were from Earth. And so as the player, you have this kind of attachment being like, hey, I'm from Earth. I want to help these people, the characters I play as in the game, get to Earth. Is that a stretch?
I mean, it's not a stretch. That is exactly like the base plot of this game. But it still kind of finds a way to undercut it. And that's not just with the whole concept of, these games have throwaway plots that are mostly just there to give some kind of reasoning for what you're doing. But because this plot with, like, I forgot the name of what's the name of the alien race?
Yeah, darned if I know.
Okay, the Xylax. Maybe it's Xylax.
That sounds great.
Maybe it's something similar. Yeah. Apparently a couple hundred years ago, they kidnapped a bunch of humans, like on a ship or something, and then they put them in a zoo. And then they kept, breeding them or something, which is kind of fucked up. But then they became slaves. They're not humans anymore. They're just chattel. And then they became presumably like second-class citizens. And then they're like equal. So all this happens on like the first page of the manual. And now you guys have money, and apparently, the alien race has a similar like venture capital system going where they could do like an expedition to go and find Earth.
Yeah.
So that's you.
Not too far off from the plot of Slaughterhouse-5. If you just take the part where they're in a zoo and they're being studied, but it looks,
or Titan AE.
It looks like it's Kojan is the name of the alien, which isn't
Kojan.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah,
whatever you had,
it's not as cool.
Alien races should always start with like X's or Z's or something, or A's for alien. Like Kojan is like, I don't know who that is.
Kind of sounds like some street guy.
At least it's not though. Him. Like at least it's not Mars, right? Like that's tired when it's aliens from Mars, or even when they try to go like with the other M planet on our solar system, Mercury. It's like, oh, that's a twist, right? Like this time the aliens are in our solar system, but they're not from Mars. It's like still kind of tired. Like I like this idea that you're so far away from Earth, but now you've like stolen the equipment of the aliens that enslaved you. And you're trying to break free, but you're also like being tracked down by them. So you figure, oh, what the heck? Might as well infiltrate all their bases.
No, Mike, you're completely misunderstanding the plot.
Okay.
The Kojans are like, they're kind of like a non-entity. Like they're just like, you are an equal among them. They just let you go. Like you paid for the ship, you paid for the fuel and the food and the whatever. Like they're just like, oh, have fun, guys. Who you're fighting is like and this is sort of what I meant by they kind of undercut it, because this is such a unique, at least in up to 1990 NES terms, a unique story that that the shoehorning in of an enemy is just like some unnamed like terrestrial terrorists, which, you know, if you wanted it to make plot sense, I would have made it the race that enslaved you. Instead, it's like oh, everything's fine, like they're letting you go, and then it's just this third party that they don't actually flesh out at all. And I'm just glad I get to complain about an undeveloped plot, you know?
Yeah, that seems very strange. I like my story better, and I'm not ashamed to admit that.
I think it is better.
Now, granted, there's no story in the game, so it's not like it really matters to begin with. This is somebody who wrote this in the span of 2 pages, so, you know, whatever. But, like...
Your headcanon is just as useful.
Yeah, my headcanon, if anything, like, that's the joy of these older video games, that you kind of make up the plot, right? Like this story could have been whatever you wanted to be if you rented this from Blockbuster without a manual, right? You didn't have to even understand the story. Instead, you just say like, oh, this is an advanced Earth civilization, and we're fighting aliens that are coming to Earth, and they're heading to destination Earthstar, not you.
True. Or you could you could pretend that you're the invader coming to invade Earth.
But you know, all of this goodwill towards the plot and, you know, me celebrating them, it's immediately forgotten, or at least they've abandoned all hope for a good plot, because they named the ship that you fly, the player's ship is named Spaceship Earthship. You can't use ship twice, and you're just saying space and Earth, which are 2 things that are like kind of in the title of the game too, so it's like Spaceship Earthship is such a that's like a first round of notes thing, you know, like there's no way that could have actually passed.
Well, I don't know, you remember the ship that the Pilgrims landed in America with? It was called the Europe ship, America ship.
Right. Yep.
You name a ship by like where it comes from and where it's going.
Right. So by your logic, it should have been Kojans ship, Earthship.
Pretty much, but you know, I guess, you know, you can futz it around with the first part, but it has to be the second part needs to be named after the destination.
You think anybody's ever named their boat like the Friendship?
I would imagine at least some person has.
Yeah. All right. Time to talk about the game.
What would you name your ship?
No. I don't know. You know, if I was going to name my ship, I always think about in The Simpsons. It's a throwaway thing with McBain, but McBain's sidekick, who dies in the very same scene, has a boat that he's going to retire on called the SS Live Forever, and I think that's so funny.
That is a very Simpsons line.
Yep, there you go. Okay, so what we're playing here, all right, is like 2 different games. It's one of those ones again where, you know, it's part shooter with the whole like, you know, 3D cockpit, dogfighting, you know, 8x8 grid map where you've got to track down the enemy alien ships and then take them on one by one. But then the other part of the game is this shmup game where, like, you know, it's copying Gradius in a lot of ways, but it controls nothing like Gradius, and it's very long and very tedious, and so is technically the shooter 3D cockpit stuff. So you kind of forget that you're switching between these games because each one of them takes so long to clear through. I don't want to give away like my thoughts too much on, but if we just focus on the 3D cockpit for a second, right? That whole dogfighting aspect, you know, are they covering any new ground than the other, you know, pseudo 3D shooters that we played on the NES here?
I'd say no. I think so. The 3D like piloting sections, they're very slow paced. I think in comparison to the other games that we've played like this, whose names mostly escape me as they usually do when I talk about games we've played in the past, I would say that the navigation tools are a bit more clear and easy to use than those games that we played in the past, but there's nothing new happening. You go to, you go to the circles, those are planets, you might find something there, but most likely you won't, and it'll just waste your time. You go to the numbers, and that kind of shows you how many ships are in that sector, and you just do a standard dogfight to kill them in like the same in a kind of simpler way than like Top Gun, like we just played. And there's a couple other places you could go to restock on fuel and I guess like missiles and stuff, but you just kill everyone on the screen, and it's probably going to take you at least 10 minutes because it takes a while to get across the map, and all the enemies are kind of scattered unless you spam hyperspace, and I guess that uses a lot of energy. So I tried to stick below light speed. And then once you clear everyone out, you go to the base, and that's where like the the shmup happens.
Right. And so just to, talk about just the grid, right? The 8x8 grid that mostly is filled with a bunch of blank spaces. And then otherwise it's like
space.
Yeah, that's true. It's like but then it's also like Battleship, but as if you can see the opponent's screen the whole time. And I don't understand this design point. It'd be like in Legend of Zelda if you already had the maps, but you had them on the overworld too. So it was like you already knew the locations of where to go were. It's just that now it's like, oh well, but can you walk to them? Like, yeah, I can, because there's nothing in my way.
You were describing every mini map in video games.
That's true. It's true, but I guess I'm keeping it NES NES-ified, because for lack of a better word, because the grid is telling you exactly the number of enemies that you're going to run into in a particular square, or if it's a 0, it's a planet. If it's an A, it's an armory. A B for base. Those are cute. A for armory, B for base. I like those. 0 for planet. I don't know.
It's a circle.
Right.
They just they did the shorthand.
Yeah, but the B kind of looks like a circle too, just the way the text is. So I would argue that the planet should have just been a P at that point, right? To also go for the same kind of first letter of the word is what it is.
You want to add lines to the planet.
Yeah. Or it's like a big antenna, right? These are advanced species. They should be having planets with big antennas to talk to each other. How do you expect to communicate with aliens? Is that what it's going to be
like in the future?
Yeah,
You're right.
We need to be building these antennas now, because it takes a while to get them that tall. All right. The point I wanted to make about the grid. Yeah, the point I wanted to make about the grid is that all those blank spaces, you kind of covered it by saying that's what space is like, but this isn't a simulator in the slightest, in my opinion. I'm not putting it in the simulator genre at all.
No.
So do you need the empty spaces? This is a video game. Things should be happening. Is it exciting when you enter this 8x8 grid and the nearest 8 spaces to you are all blank?
Okay. So I think that even though it's not a simulator, I do think that there needs to be some like liminal situation where it's not like always in battle. Like if you're trying to make this about sort of explore, I mean, it's not really exploring. So I'm talking myself out of this right now, but if it's going to be this system of here's your zone, clear out this zone, and then move on, it needs to have some kind of texture to it of like emptiness and points of interest. Otherwise, you may just have it be like a linear level. Like it should just be a first person shmup leading into a side-scrolling shmup. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, forget for a second that it is a 3D space, and that they even they go through the trouble of the X, Y, and Z axis, and like you can see your coordinates across all 3 and stuff. If you didn't have that and it was more of a on-rails thing, it would be even closer to the closest video game I could think of while playing this, which is Star Fox. Star Fox 2, specifically, if you ever played that on the Super Nintendo. But the way that, this XYZ works, especially with the mostly one-on-one enemy fights, is very cool if the enemies were actually any good at fighting. I don't know what that's about. I don't know, like, why they don't fire as often as we do. Like, as the player, the only thing really stopping you from using your laser is the fact that it overheats. But to the enemy, it's like, if I don't have the perfect shot, I'm not shooting at the player. And that just, it makes this really weird, weak dogfighting where the actual obstacle of the fight between you and the enemy is just, can you target them? Can you slow down your speed enough so that you can maneuver around them, lock back on them, and then hit them? I don't think that's enough. I think they should have had a little more prowess to them.
One thing, I'm going to circle back to that in a second, but one thing that I do want to give them praise for is something that, like, we've kind of called for in games that want to have more inputs than this controller can do, and that's having, like, you hold down a button and you mess with the D-pad and that, like, modifies what you're trying to modify. So that makes this whole Z-axis thing a lot more accessible, is because it's easy to navigate that, because it offloaded other controls to this sort of hold button to modify thing. So I just wanted to give that praise there.
It's all happening through the B button plus the directional pads, and even the B button plus select at the same time, which is might be a unique input on the NES. I don't think we've seen that one yet.
And that's to bring the map up and down, right?
Yes, so not necessarily
really
the most useful.
Have any reason to.
Right.
Yeah. But going back to just how the dogfights go, I think that everything that you said is true, and I'm leaning towards, like, oh, they didn't want it to be as frustrating as other games that do this with, like, oh, it's so fast that you have to keep, like, retracking them, even though that might be part of the fun of the game. I think another part of this that makes it less fun is that there is no sense of speed in this game. Like, you've got stars flying past you, which means that you're ripping, and you're always going faster than light, but they move so slowly, and they're always moving like that, no matter whether you're in a fight, or you're going between spaces, or trying to land at the base. Like, it's just this constant sort of crawl. So it doesn't feel like it's edge of your seat, like, dogfight. It's just like, oh, he's kind of floating towards me. Like, oh, he's kind of floating farther away now.
It should have been a battle inside of an asteroid belt, so this way we could complain about all the asteroids in the game and how we keep knocking ourselves into them.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, you're talking about the unique controls, and it's a shame Joe's not here, but I can't let us forget that the way to pause this game is to press the A and B button together. Two things that do things in this game when pressed separately. When pressed together, stop all action in the game.
Yeah, that's probably one of the weirdest decisions that they made, because, you could still use start for that.
To the best of my knowledge, start doesn't do anything in this game.
I think does it not?
I can't remember maybe start. Maybe start is how you cycle through the weapons, but I thought that was select.
Yes, I think. Oh, okay. Now you got me confused.
Nope, it says in the manual to select a new weapon, press the start button. So we're okay.
I mean, even then, just like, okay, now hold B and start. Like, you've already introduced this concept.
Right. And then, we always talk about this with the cockpits and how, oh, it's so cool that everything means something. That novelty is wearing off for me at this point, and maybe it's the fact that it's really, complicated here. Not necessarily complicated in that it's impossible to understand. Everything still functions, everything still works, but it's all just red text, and it's not necessarily, like, displayed in a way that, like, in the Top Gun episode or even the Infiltrator episode, we were talking about how cool those cockpits were because, one, they looked like cockpits, and then they had all the information with stuff working on them. This one's more like, oh, we included an Apple II text-only version of the computer console into the things. This way, technically, you're still getting all the information you need, but I can't read that on the fly as well as I could other cockpits.
Well, you wouldn't need to. Like, that's sort of been an issue that's been ongoing with this trope. Like, with these HUDs, it's kind of a stretch to say that most of it is necessary information, and this one even more so. You don't need to know your heading. Like, you don't need to know exactly the X, Y, and Z coordinates that you're at, or even what angle that you're traveling at. Like, basically, everything that's necessary is the map, the sort of radar scopes, and the, like, 8-dot speedometer, pretty much, in the center. Everything else is extraneous. You don't really need to look at it. It just makes it look more complex.
Every enemy in this game is a battle. It's not a, you shot them and then they go blow up or, fall endlessly into space now. I don't know how that would work. If ships don't blow up but they run out of power, do you still chase them down and blow them up, or are you like, wow, sucks for them, they're just going to drift in space forever?
I mean, if the Expanse is anything to go by, like, you would just sort of let them suffocate slowly.
Wow. All right. That's a tough way to go. I'd show some mercy. I'd blow them up.
Depends on who it is.
Anyway, what do you think about that design decision that, like, keep in mind, these aren't boss fights. They're just long fights. They're multiple shots to take down an enemy. There's not many options for maneuvering other than just kind of slowing your speed down to circle around your enemy. And yes, the lasers have a cooldown, and the torpedoes, I don't know, allegedly they work. They never worked for me. There is 2 other upgrades you can get later on, but this is the battle system. And so in an 8x8 grid with 64 squares, did you need, and there's, keep in mind, it's not just like one enemy on a screen. Sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 3. Did you need these to be long battles?
I think that the way that they designed the maps, these had to have been long battles. Because, if there's only 8 enemies and it takes 1 shot to kill them, I would prefer this be a smaller arena and maybe make it more action-focused. Because if it doesn't take a while to take them down, like, it should at least feel like a mini boss battle. Like, each dogfight should require some level of engagement beyond point and shoot. Otherwise, it should have just been like everyone in a smaller sphere, and you could just see everyone at once.
And I'm saying long battle, but it's not, right? It's 30 seconds, so at max.
It's like 2 or 3 hits, 3 or 4 hits.
And, 30 seconds even would be a long time for the battle. So it's not necessarily long. It's just the idea that, especially as you first start the game with, the targeting and everything, I just worry about the players who jump into this game in 2023 and, first off, it's a lot of information to ask for someone to, like, dig into, right? People like to start their games and just go right into them. I'm sure that the numbers and letters on this grid mean something to some people, but not everyone's going to get it right away. So automatically you're starting in a situation where you're just kind of flying through space unaware. And that makes me think of Star Voyager, another NES game we had a long time ago, that was even more, like, dry and blank. But here, I just worry about how do you keep people hooked, And clearly, the armories and the bases aren't enough for discovery. The hyperspace is cool, right? Probably the only reason why stars should be flying past you. It looks very similar to what happens in Star Wars when they do. What do they do there? What is that called?
I think it's warp. No,
that's
I
Star
think it's
Trek,
hyperspace.
Right? Yeah. Hyperspace.
You know what? I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah, Joe would know, and it's a shame that he's looking for Sam this episode. Okay.
It's probably hyperspace.
Forget that, though. Forget everything, actually, about this whole 3D cockpit shooting section, because once you take down every enemy on the screen, all of a sudden, the enemy base reveals itself, and you can go to it. And first off, we never talked about this with the armories and the bases either, or the planets that you survey. But the cool thing about them is that you have to slow down. You can't be going like sublight 7 near these planets because you'll just kind of fly past them. So you have to, like, slow down, locate them, slowly approach them, and then it, like, it sucks you in. It's not really sucking you in, but you lose control of your ship.
Yeah, you
and
get to a certain point and you're landing.
Right,
now.
and now you're in the base, or you're replenishing your weapon supply. But there's nothing really interesting happening other than the time where after you've cleared all the enemies off the screen and then you go into the enemy base. This is where the shmup section begins. Do we now start reviewing this game like it's a shmup?
I mean, I guess that's what it wants to be,
right? Because I kind of question if it seems like, from my experience playing this game, every single time I got to the shmup section, it feels like they were given the code for what a shmup is by another team, but they themselves never played a shmup, because this is gotta be one of the hardest shmups and the tightest controls and the tightest controls in a bad way. I'm saying, like, you cannot move this ship at your own will. There's one direction in the D-pad to move a little faster, the other direction to pull back. That's not going to help you when enemies are always firing. And it's not even like the enemies are hard or anything. It's just the claustrophobic nature of these bases.
Claustrophobia is what I would describe it as. Because, like, in a normal shmup, you got a whole wide open space to maneuver, and there's a lot of enemies, and they're traveling in patterns, and they're shooting, like, slow projectiles, but it doesn't matter because you have all this real estate. And this is a very, like, it's like you said, like, they were given the code for what how to program a shmup, but they had never played one, so they didn't really know, like, that base philosophy of design for a shmup. It's not about the crowd control. It's about going through tunnels that you can kind of excavate yourself, and it's more so don't touch the edges, and the enemies aren't so much like coming towards you and firing at you. Like, it's more so based on obstacles. Like, there's a lot of like missiles that are like laid like traps for you, and it's a very different vibe than most shmups.
In one of the only cutscenes for this game, you get a really cool 2D pixel art rendering of your spaceship, the spaceship Earthship, which just drives me crazy. And it kind of looks like sorry, I'm not the Star Wars nerd I thought I was, I suppose, but it kind of looks like a cross between the X-Wing and that other ship that Luke flies in the beginning of Episode 5 on Hoth.
Yes.
It looks like a cross between those two ships.
Like the Y-Wing or whatever?
I really don't know. But, that's not important, because I guess the point I was making is that it seems like if they were inspired by anything, it would be that whole, like, Episode 4 ending where Luke has to go into the Death Star trenches and quickly navigate through and hit that one little spot. Like, that's the claustrophobic nature of this, like, entering the base and anything can kill you. I just don't think it's actually that fun. I think what we wind up getting is a shmup that you die a lot in, a complete change in game, a game that probably people who were interested in the 3D shooter aspect of this game are now completely turned off because they don't like that shmups are these 2Ds on rails limited control of spaceships. Like, they probably wanted the complete opposite. I feel like it's two different audiences, and yet I somehow know that even the shmup audience is pissed by this game.
Yeah, it's also like some parts just feel unfair. Like, at a certain point, and you have a button dedicated to firing behind you, but usually there's so little clearance behind you and the edge of the screen and you're not paying attention over there because you have so much other stuff to take note of ahead of you. They'll just come in, shoot you once, and you're dead. Like, there's no, and then let's say you die 3 times, you got to go back to the space exploration part and do that for another 20 minutes.
Right, which by all comparisons to the shmup, I'm not saying that the game itself is easy, but compared to the shmup part of the level, that is very easy to get through, and so you're really just punished to play through the part that is, that you'll get to, but then when you get back to this, there's no guarantee that you're going to clear it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even like it's building up to anything cool, though, I swear. Like, some of the boss fights are just, like, 2 circles. It's just like, oh, this is the big boss at the end. It's 2 circles. Wait till the next boss, it's 2 rectangles.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's almost like they just sort of upscaled a couple normal enemies and made them, like, because you stop moving, at least for the first boss. It's just a couple weird looking, look like turrets or something, and you just stop and you shoot them 3 or 4 times and they blow up, and then that's the end of the level. After this kind of gauntlet that they put you through, it's like the level itself is kind of harder than the boss, and yeah, there's a lot of head scratchers here.
Yeah, but surely you're very rewarded, right? Like for completing the level, like it's got to be a big reward. What happens in the next level? We've only been talking about the very first level of this game. Surely they're not all the same.
Oh, yeah, you just do it again.
What?
Yeah, you just go back and you do it again.
7 times. This time
with, yeah.
I actually don't know if it's 7. I think it might be 6, but like, nevertheless, the point remains that what we described is the gameplay loop. It's not even like, oh, that was the unique thing that happens in the first level or whatever, and now the next level, like, they're going to introduce something new. It's like, nope, the game switches between this 3D space and this shmup game, and the only difference from the one level to the next isn't even like, it's not even aesthetically pleasing. It's not like space looks different or something, which I think would be funny if space looked different. Like, you traveled so far that outer space now looks different. Not that that's a thing. But it's just, okay, cool. Now this time we put more enemies on the screen. You got even more enemies to clear. And the shmup section, it's even harder. And there's new enemies in the shmup section to shoot.
Yeah, the shmup section at least looks different in each level, but not by, I mean, it's not crazy.
Right.
I think
it is as hard as it's as hard as it gets right at the beginning. Like, if you don't enjoy that, you won't like the rest of the game. And that's it takes maybe 15 minutes to get to the shmup section, and so you'll know right away if you like this game or not in 15 minutes, which is great, because otherwise it might take you 40 hours to beat this game.
I do have a question for you as someone that probably did more research for this episode than I did.
Sure.
Is the ending, like, do you go to Earth? Like, do you know?
Yeah, so actually the ending is the only time that you get a boss that looks anything other than like circles and squares and stuff like that. But it's not particularly interesting. I would love it to be some kind of cosmic entity or something, but instead it's like this nebula looking thing, like with 2 particles surrounding it. Very cool. But afterwards you see the planet destroyed. It says the people of which could have been Earth, but it's not. It's the planet you were going to, and it says,
yeah, Earth.
The people of Earth welcome you. ... Home again.
But it's destroyed?
I'm not certain that was Earth. I think that was the final obstacle to get to Earth.
So then they don't show Earth.
They don't show Earth. They show you text that says that you're
this whole goddamn time you're trying to go to Earth, and they don't show you Earth?
Well, it's not like we could possibly know what Earth looks like.
A blue planet with green, maybe.
In 1990, did we have a good idea of what the Earth looked like from space? I'm joking.
You're right.
I'm joking.
You're right. It was all Here There Be Dragons.
You know what's funny though, Sean? Even worse than all that. Forget the fact that it's text that just tells you that you made it to Earth rather than showing you a great visual of the Earth. What do you think happens immediately after that text?
Does the game start over?
Yes.
Oh,
including your score?
Wow.
Like, that's crazy, right? We've never seen that before. Usually the one carryover is your score, but in this, the score even resets. So there's really no reason to play. They just didn't think about anybody getting to the end.
Maybe that was for the best.
On the sequels and spin-off side, there are none.
I figured.
But this is an Imagineering game. We have talked about them twice before now. They did A Boy and His Blob. That was cute. But that was cute. Remember, that wasn't really them, right? Like that was the developer listed on it. But
was that Victor?
Wasn't that David? No. It was David Crane, right?
Oh, David Crane.
Yeah, it was like, remember, it was like
I knew
his
it was made
game.
by like a dude.
It's like branded on him. In the main menu, I was like, that's crazy that he got his name in there. We don't see that too often. But also Stealth ATF was another game of theirs, and that makes sense because that's the shooter. Not sure where A Boy and His Blob came in, but maybe they were just tasked at the last minute with helping David Crane port it over to the NES or what have you.
Yeah, he had done them a solid in the past, and there's like, yeah, we'll publish a game.
Right. Well, no, because the publisher is different. See, Imagineering, they just know how to make games. The publisher for this one is actually Acclaim.
Oh, yeah, it was Acclaim, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Acclaim is a company that, like, we know all this stuff about LJN and, and their reputation, right? And maybe it's not on them, maybe it is on them. It's definitely on them for publishing the bad games. Not saying they made them, but like with Acclaim, that's someone who I remember seeing even as a child, like on the N64 and the PS1, but like I don't know like which game specifically they made, and I don't know how I associate like this logo. I
always associated Acclaim with NBA Jam.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is a great game.
Yeah, I mean, like that. Yeah, that's a good one to think of them as if you want to think of them as a game. I guess I'm saying like I'm very familiar with their logo, and I know I've played many games with it on it. Just don't know how I feel about them as a publisher.
But I also do know that they have a reputation for, being, maybe kind of not being able to read the room in terms of 90s and early aughts marketing. And I think they were making some pretty bad games around then too. So really, I think the only great game that I know from Acclaim is NBA Jam, unless I'm just forgetting something.
And it's very possible you are, because they've been a publisher for so long. They had to publish at least one other good game.
Yeah.
But is Destination Earthstar one of those good games that they published? Sean, we will answer that question on the Essential Games list. The shmup section isn't what removes this from consideration on the Essential Games list. We didn't have an incredible game for like part one of this game, and then all of a sudden when the shmup section comes in, it's like, I'm out. That's going to happen to a lot of people. There are a lot of people who don't like shmups, and they're going to say that they're out as soon as that part's revealed. But forget that. It's not even that part that matters. It's really that the actual like gameplay loop from the very beginning, and the thing that you're going to do across all these different levels is pretty bare and stale, and it's just about doing it. It's not necessarily about the fun of doing it. The numbers tell you where the enemies are. You go to them, you shoot them down. They put up somewhat of a fight. I really don't think they did, but who knows? I can't say if in level 5 all of a sudden they're fighting like Star Wolf. That's another Star Fox reference. But maybe they are, maybe they aren't. It's just not. It's not there right away, and so therefore it's like it's a chore right from the very beginning. And then if you enjoyed all of that, it's taken away from you. But even if you didn't like that part, now you're into the shmup section, well, good luck, brother, because this is not an easy journey. And we talked about it already. So I just wanted to say that, like, overall, this is a game not worthy of the Essential Games list. It's not like, oh, well, if they had just focused on the space stuff, it would have been a great game. Or if they would have worked longer on the shmup things or followed a different format. It's like, no. This game overall doesn't do it for me. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasant enough experience in the 3D like exploration segments, and like I do like some things they did with the controls to sort of add some versatility to the NES controller. But yeah, everything that we've set up to this point, between how slow everything is in that mode and how unchallenging it kind of is and how boring it can be when you're just traveling about looking for a fight. And then the vibe of the shmup portion that you just described. I'm not going to describe it again. It is not an essential game.
All right, so that's 2 no's. We can only wonder what Joe and Sam would have said, but when they come back, they'll tell us.
Yeah.
And we'll come back next week. We have another game called Rollerball. Sean, any guesses?
Is that like Murder Ball?
What's Murder Ball?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking of Rollerball. It's a sport where people get hurt a lot.
Yeah, the one that that famous movie was with the girls all playing in.
Yeah.
What's that? What is that?
Is that Rollerball?
Called?
Oh, you mean like derby, the roller derby?
Yes, roller derby. There you go. Yeah, which is clearly what it's not, because they would have just called it roller derby. But this is the time.
I mean, there is a movie called Rollerball from the 70s. I think it is what we're talking about.
Great. Okay. So this is just a late adaptation of that movie, but on the NES.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. Okay, so that's what that is. Look forward to that next week. Everybody go watch that movie, I guess. I've never seen it. I'm going to have to catch up on it too. And then if you don't want to play Rollerball, or you're just tired of American games released in North America, might I interest you in games released only in Japan, because that's what we do over at Nostalgia Bites. You can join us at patreon.com/nostalgia. Spoiler alert, it's $5. Spoiler alert, it's worth it. And the next game on the list for Nostalgia Bites is a game called Cocoron. And I am saying it like that, but it could be Cocoron. I don't know.
Cocoron.
I like Cocoron, that's my
Cocoron.
Yeah. Oh, Maron, that's what the Italians are saying when I get the name wrong. They're like, oh no, it's Cocoron. Anyway, that game, platforming game where you like build your character. I've never heard of that before. Imagine if you got to like select Mario's attributes before you started playing as him. That's pretty cool.
Can I make him like kind of like cool and mean?
Well,
can I make him mean?
Bold of you to assume it's a him.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Mario.
Right. You could make Mario in the game. Right. That's a good idea. Build your character to be just like Mario. Yeah, but he's mean and he has a gun, so it's M-rated.
Shadow the Mario brother.
Mario the Hedgehog.